Now, we call this gathering first fruit, right? And now later I'm going to explain a little bit why first fruit is a biblical feast. It's just a time we come mostly to celebrate, right? I mean, we have teaching, we have prophetic stuff, but mostly we are here to celebrate because we needed this kind of time to be able to just advance now. This is a month, Hebrew month of Kislev. We are quite near Passover now. You know, sometimes you come here, we kept talking about the warfare, we kept talking about the challenges. It's because every morning, I don't think anyone read newspaper anymore, but when you read news, when you see the television, when you hear the radio, or however you consume the happening around the world, you are seeing things are happening around the world, right? It's like we're not in a very peaceful kind of situation. And I mean, of course, war doesn't mean it's bomb dropping here or guns firing, but there is all kind of war, the cultural war, the economic war. And you know, if you have been to overseas recently, you will start to realize that ringgit is really, really weak, right? And it's like everything is so expensive. And even domestic holiday is not cheap. I know some of you, this is Deepavali weekend, some of us are not here, but it's not cheap to even have holiday at a domestic level. So there is that war, but I want to talk about just, this concept of reprieve. And I know some of you are like, what the heck is this word, right? But it's just something that I heard from the Lord as I prepared this, and I'm going to explain it because every time we have first fruit, we come to a place where we can hear prophetic word, we can hear revelation. And I was just sitting there, I remember there are days when we hear prophetic word and we're like not sure what's happening, right? Have you heard people prophesy and you're not sure what they're talking about? And that is the last season, and I really felt like this season, God is going to give us understanding very quickly. When we hear prophetic word, we can immediately take it and apply for ourselves. And the application will be very different because we are all in different places. All right, so I'm going to talk about that a bit later. But let's talk about this first fruit first, right? And it is actually biblical. Actually, initially when I do the slide, I type full moon, okay? It's not full moon, okay? It's new moon. So every time, the Hebrew calendar follows the Chinese calendar, follows the Muslim calendar. So new moon is big moon or small moon? Yeah, it's not a trick question. It is very, very small, right? So every time you have Hari Raya or whatever, they are looking, right? Can we see even a glimpse of moon? Okay, tomorrow holiday or whatever. And that kind of thing. So it's new moon, and the Hebrew is called Rosh Chodesh. You type new moon in your Bible, there's more than 30 references. More reference than Easter, more reference than Christmas. All right? So it is a biblical celebration, and it is really talking about the relationship. God has a relationship with us, right? And we can use one word, it's called cyclical. That means it's a cycle. What does it mean by cycle? If we do certain things, we respond to God, He responds to us. If we don't respond to God, Him, then certain things will come. So that's why when we kind of say we don't want God, we look at Tower of Babel when they show their feast to God. God said, "I'm going to disperse you with many language." When the fallen angels and men created the giants for 1,000 years, God said, "I'm going to send a flood." So every time we don't respond to God, certain things will happen. That is what we mean by cyclical. And so going back to the biblical time, Rosh Chodesh is a time where they come and Israel was asked to bring the very best of their crops. So remember, they were agricultural people, farmers. How many of you are farmers here? By the way, if you're in farming, you can be rich in near future because we're having food security issue and things like that. So Israel, they planted what? Wheat, they planted barley, all kind of things. So all of a sudden, when they come to celebrate, God said, "I want you to bring your best." Now, what is best? Best is first fruit. That means you have to understand a little bit about agriculture. They will plant certain things, and then the first shoot will come up. You see, it's not like today. Today, you want to plant tomato, you want to plant chili, or whatever. You go to a shop, you can buy the seed, right? Okay. Any of you planting? Actually, my house is like becoming a mini garden now. And so you can buy the seed, you can buy the plant. But those days, no such thing. You have to plant it, and then when the first young shoot come out, you take it out, and you put in the storeroom. Why? Because it's an insurance. If your crops die because of drought, because of rain, whatever, then you take your insurance and plant again. That is first fruit. So imagine this, God asks you to give up your insurance. That's why it's a test of faith. First fruit is a test of covenantal faith. So every time you come here, you have to give up something before you even know. Some of you are busy, some of you have exam, some of you have whatever, but you chose to give your best time to God. And that's going to be the test of your covenantal faith. Okay, that's Rosh Kodesh. And so demonstrating of our faith. And now here's another thing. It does not matter if you had a great or bad month. Now some of you, who has a great month? Okay, no need to raise your hand. But you know, I could see from your face you're very happy and things like that. But it doesn't mean that you will continue to have a great month, because you need to exercise that faith again and again. Now, how many of you have a bad month? Okay, no need to raise your hand. And it doesn't mean that you will continue to have that, because here's an opportunity for reset. Here's an opportunity for us to choose. Look at your neighbor and say, we need to choose faith once again. So what does it mean by once again? It means repeatedly. We have to do it again and again and again. And you know, we are all marketplace people, we know, right? I mean, consistency is the key. Everyone can once in a while hit their KPI. Wow, this month, 200%. So what? Can you do it again? You know, can you repeat again? That's why in sports, right? You know, some of the sports, right? Repeat championship is really the absolute credential. Win again, win again. You know, that's why you see some of the great teams. You see like Real Madrid, Zidane's Real Madrid, 3 Champions Leagues in a row. That's legacy. That's unbreakable legacy. So that's why when you do that, all of a sudden, the area of your finance, the area of your time, the area of your emotion and submission, all this comes in. Because some of us, we have no problem with finance. We can give. But what about your time? What about your emotion? You know, if every time you come here, you feel a bit down, you feel like I'm not stable, then maybe you need to choose faith once again. So when we do this once again, the nature of covenant, that means God will show himself. When we do that, he will know that the goodness of him. That's why Rosh Kodesh is for us to come. You know, I usually try not to do a long teaching if I can. Then we're going to have celebration and things like that. And we're going to have a bit of training. And that's why it's really for celebration and to advance. Every time we do that, we see a glimpse. We get to know Jesus more and more. And, you know, that's how relationships are built. All right, so why first fruit? You know, just very quickly, we already say it's a test of faith, extravagant faith, because, you know, a few months ago, we talked about Elisha, right, and the women, and not having enough and things like that. So we give before we even know if we have enough. It's called extravagant faith in all the area. So God will show you which area you need to be tested. And then cleansing, of course, Romans 11:7. If you give a portion, the rest is sanctified. Now, this is a spiritual mystery. Look at your neighbor and say, mystery. Now, by the way, mystery in biblical term is not Sherlock Holmes mystery, right? It's not Scooby-Doo mystery, right? You know Scooby-Doo is Mystery Inc., right? But mystery is something hidden, and all of a sudden it is revealed. So it's like, how does this work? Romans 11:7, when you give a small portion, everything is cleansed. How does it work? And you have testimonies and things like that. Now, by the way, if you still have testimonies, I know last Hebrew year, we kind of do divine recovery testimony. But if you still have testimony, feel free to come and share. There's no testimony that is too small or too big, okay? So this is a mystery, but when you walk through it, the effect of cleansing. Then, of course, first fruit, Proverbs 3:10. When we give our best, all of a sudden, God says, your vats, that means the container of your wine, will overflow. Overflow. So when we talk about wine, we're talking about revelation. Look at your neighbor and say revelation. So that's why every month, very important to know what is the prophetic focus of this month. So this month, 2 things. We want to talk about your war strategies. We're in a season of war, right? And whether it's a physical war, actually in Malaysia, we are more in a, I don't know how to describe the war in Malaysia. It's very complicated, okay? And yeah, but it's okay. You know, whatever is your arena, God will show you what are your strategies. Then we talk about support system, and that's where later I want to talk about the reprieve system. Actually, reprieve is a very legal word. There's a legal impact to that, and we'll talk about that in a while. All right, so the month of Kislev is the 8th month from the new year, Nisan. Nisan, of course, is Passover time. But more importantly, from the perspective of reaching Passover, we're only 4 months away. Very, very quick, right? I mean, those of us in business, 1 quarter, 3 months, and the quarter is very, very fast. Everyone is busy with the fourth quarter, right? Try to close all the sales, try to finalize the accounts so that we can share our shareholders. We have done a good job this year. Please pay us our bonus. Please pay us our dividend and things like that. So, yeah, I mean, those of you in accounting, you're trying to come up with the nicest number possible, right? So, fourth quarter. So, we are very, very close to Passover. Now, here's the thing. As we approach Passover, we need to understand there's an opportunity. God will give us time and space. Time and space to do what we need to do. So, first fruit, another thing is always adjustment. We are here because something is not right, and God will use the prophetic, God will use the worship, God will use the relationship you have, whatever. All the things come together, help us to adjust, and that we can advance into the future. All right, so from now until Passover, this is one of the things that I said last time, but I want to just kind of remind you again. Every time we have first fruit, we also have Tribe Advancing School, TAS. And that's 2 p.m. later. You need to register to join. It will be here on site, or you can join online. So what I want to do, of course, we want to talk about the atmosphere. We want to talk about the intercessory. How do we stand between heaven and earth? Talk about warfare, how we can have occupation. All these things are very interesting. Now, today, we have quite interesting teaching, really help us. We talk about the spirit of evangelism, right? There are people out there really want something new. But how do you communicate? So one of the teaching this afternoon will be how do you share the vision of what God asks us to do in a short time. Because sometimes you'll be like, oh, all the things so complicated. How do I even begin? It's like, sometimes I look at someone new, right? I'm like, okay. They ask, so what church you go to? Where do we start? It's like, yeah, I mean, you kind of have this kind of, I won't say apprehension. It's not apprehension. It's like challenge, right? How to summarize it. So that's one of the things we're going to do this afternoon. So do join us if you are interested, okay? Then, of course, we want to, now Passover is 4 months away, but why it is important to look at it? Because this is a decade of Passover. Every Passover have great significance. And it's just a time for us to move beyond a particular time cycle. I mean, you look at Malaysia, and later, we see what's happening with Israel, with Hamas, and all these kind of things. We are in a time where the nation is kind of choosing. And now, I know some of the Christians will be, what can we do? What can we do? Should we go and declare? No, you don't go and declare the government come down or things like that. That's not your job. That's not your sphere. But you need to understand there is a time cycle for the nation. And we can declare we have certain revelation about what can be done. Okay, so we are always asking 2 questions at Passover. What are we stepping into? That means the new things God is giving us. But then we are also leaving, right? Israel left Egypt. But what are we leaving? So this is a personal question. This is just now, even the prophetic team was saying that some of us need to drop things of the past so that we can move on. But also for us as a people group. All right, so I want to talk about 2 things today, okay? Just 2 things. And it's really, we want to first talk about the war strategies. We talked about this last year, but this year is not the same as last year, right? So sometimes you look at the first fruit, be like, let's just recycle the teaching. Let's just recycle the song. It's not like that. There is a different prophetic spirit in this season. So I want to talk about that for this season, 5, 7, 8, 4. Then I want to talk about reprieve. Look at your neighbor and say, reprieve. Okay, reprieve, okay, it's pronounced reprieve, okay? And so it's like, yeah, you can do a dictionary search now if you want and things like that. But it's really a very legal word, and when I look at the word reprieve, I think about grace. I think about mercy. I think about additional time. I think about, when you have a penalty and all of a sudden you have more time to settle your penalty. So those kind of things that will just, God is trying to show us. So let's talk about the war strategies because every season is different. Now, I want to start with this verse, a very well-known verse, Matthew 24:6. And now remember when Jesus came, there was a group of them. They were like the zealots, they were hoping that Jesus will become the revolution king and they will overthrow Roman. So Judas was there, the sons of, even John the Baptist. But then there are other people who are more of the lamb people, lamb as in the sheep, right? And they're very afraid of all these things. So Jesus began to speak to them. You will be hearing, verse 6, you will be hearing of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not frightened, for these things must take place. But that is not yet the end. So there are some people who say, this is the end, right? Let's buy a house, let's buy a nuclear bunker. I don't know if you can get a bunker here or not. Let's stock up for 5 years. I don't even know how you stock up for 5 years, what kind of technology you need. But there are people who are really, really afraid. Everything they do is motivated by fear. Not us. That's not going to be us, right? So, ever since we stepped into this prophetic season, we call this the decade of pay. In fact, Hebrew year 5780, our normal calendar is October 2019, just before COVID, right? Remember, once we enter into that decade, the whole world kind of became messed up until now. We have seen continual demonstration for the contention of nations. Nations are fighting, right? I mean, before that, of course, we have seen that. 2016 with Brexit, there's the European Union were fighting. Donald Trump became president. There's a trade war and things like that. So it's all happening. Nations are trying to become stronger. And in the midst of this, of course, our nation also try to play a part. But actually, we are just a bit too small at this stage. So part of this process involves rumors of war. Now people will say, right, now you have war in Middle East, then maybe there'll be war in Taiwan. Some people are like, don't go to Taiwan for holiday now, very, very scared or whatever. But that's the thing, that's rumors of war, right? Actually, I remember when I was very, very young. How young? Maybe 5, 6 years old? Even 6 years old, 7 years old, I kind of heard, because that was towards the end of Russia, right? Russia was very weak already at that time, and a lot of people are saying at that time, of course, this is the adults talking about news. Actually, ever since I was very young, somehow I was involved with this kind of discussion. Very, very strange. There's a Cambodian war movie. I can't remember what's the movie. Killing Field. I think I went to see Killing Field when I was 6 or 7. I can't believe my parents brought me there. But anyway, then they were saying about, maybe Russia will start to attack and things like that. So that's rumors of war. But in this generation, we haven't seen so much rumors of war until recent time. That's why we grew up relatively peaceful, but all of a sudden, we have this kind of emotion swirling around. So that's why it's very, very important. And it's not just the bombs, the guns, but there's economic war, a cultural war, etc. Of course, there's an actual war. The Ukraine war, of course, the Israel-Hamas, they are actual war. People are dying and things like that. See, although here, yes, the people of God, we are to focus on spiritual warfare, right? Our war is not against flesh and blood, right? That's what Apostle Paul said, right? But we need to understand that the effects of spiritual warfare, that means what happened in the spiritual often translates into the physical. So when you look at what's happening today, there is a spiritual side to that, right? There is a spiritual side, there's a Leviathan, there's an Islamic spirit, all these things. So we need to understand that they are linked, they are not separate. So that's why when we look back to the verse, Matthew 24, verse 6, Jesus gave us 2 important points when we are confronted. We are in this season of war. The first thing he says is, see that you are not frightened. Don't be fearful, because, you see, many have gone through cycles of testing, right? I mean, we talk about COVID time, we talk about lockdown. Many of you have gone through many cycles, right? So you have gone through from very afraid, and some people became more afraid. But others kind of overcame that fear, and they are no longer afraid. So we have gone through many, many cycles. See, central to all these things is really, at the end of the day, it's very simple. What is our emotion when it comes to fear? You see, you can't really say, I don't want to have fear, because that fear will come. But it's really how you deal with it. So it's not something you can just cast out, but it's something that you have to overcome. I mean, when you do deliverance, you don't say fear, leave the person, right? It's that person has to overcome fear. So how we deal with fear. And of course, we can do all the necessary things, preparation, planning, we can strategize. But if I'm talking about preparing for a season of war and rumors of war, you can prepare with water, you can prepare your finance, you invest properly. But if our foundation is fear, if you do certain things because you are afraid, it will crumble down very, very quickly. So this is something we need to be very, very aware of in this season. Then the second thing he said, those things must take place. And I think it's as clear as he could, right? It's like, well, it has to happen, too bad. Too bad you are in this season. I mean, that's what Jesus is saying, right? So things are happening, but why are things happening? And we think about what has happened since 2020, right? I mean, almost everything around the world, inflation, Israel, Ukraine, the cultural war, and things like that, almost everything is linked back to the change of government in US. It is. I mean, if you study the world news, but I look back and it's like, no, it is necessary to happen so that nations can begin to choose. So see, all this conflict is causing even our nation to begin to choose. And it's like, well, at the moment, our nation is not choosing rightly, and that's why there is an authority for us to impact our nation, so that eventually the decision will become correct. But anyway, Jesus is saying, look, things are happening. You can't stop it. It has to happen. It has to happen. The war has to happen. Even though many people are dying, it has to happen. So I talked about season of chaff last week, and it's something that we will continue to talk about. Even today, TAS, I think some of them will talk about. Now, season of chaff, basically, just give a few points for us to kind of process the whole prophetic revelation. It's basically a season of separation. God wants to know who is for him and who is against him. It's that simple. And that's why, I mean, when you look at Israel and Hamas war, I would say this. I would say God allowed it to happen so that a line will be drawn. See, God is separating the masses from the remnant. We talk about remnant also. Remnant is just those people who really want to serve God versus those people who just kind of gather around and they are like stay very far away. They don't have a relationship. But when God separated, the people God will choose to carry out his assignment, those are the remnant. And we all want to be the remnant, right? Because remnant will complete the task and you will receive the great reward. So season of chaff, it will happen in a way where the standard of God will be made clear. That's why when we look at Israel-Hamas issue, it's really going to determine where you stand. And it's so interesting, right, that they're seeing at the protests, at the university level, at the Ivy League level, is exposing the true color of the Ivy League. And it's like, I tell you, Education Mountain is in for a huge shake. By the way, do you know that UK just deported a citizen because they were involved with pro-Palestine activities? UK citizen. And it seems like some people in UK government suddenly had a brain. and began to understand their open border policies for years and decades are now reaping bad fruits. So it's like that, right? Sometimes we need to be in very bad situation, right? Like Malaysia also, right? I don't know, are we able to change now or do we need the situation to be worse? This is just the prophetic word. And remember, do not be afraid. Let your spirit process whatever God is saying right now. And you will have a role to play. We will have a role to play. So that's why in this season, we have to make our choice carefully. And I already mentioned, right, first fruit for us to come and celebrate, process the prophetic word, but don't get too down and it's like, I can't process it. Well, just take a bit of time to process it. You have the whole month to process it. But don't wait until the month is over because there is that focus. We just began the month of Kislev. For the next 1 month, God will cause this processing to happen. Now, I want to talk about this. How would the Lord bring about this separation? How will he do that? And because when we understand this, we can begin to look at the strategies that we should have. Because if you don't understand the problem, you cannot have strategy, right? So every time you have a meeting here, it's like, sometimes you have some bosses who are a bit clueless. I want the solution now. Then he's like, okay, what's the problem? I don't want to hear that. I want a solution now. But it's like we had to go back a bit and think about what is the issue, what is happening around the world. Then, only then, we can do the right strategies. So that's why before we even think, we need to understand the overall prophetic picture. And I want to say again, I say it just now, I really believe this is a season many of us will be able to process even very complicated prophetic words very quickly. And that's something that you all need to have. And I know some of you will be like, oh, what the heck is he talking about? I don't understand world economy. I don't understand politics and things like that. But God will make you understand. And one of the things I was just reading Old Testament prophet, and it's an encouragement to us that do you know that most of the time the prophets have no idea what's happening? And Jeremiah was like, what is happening? And then get scolded. Isaiah is like, oh, there's a conspiracy. And God said, you better not say, you better not declare. Is it so often when we do that, all of a sudden we get a rebuke. It's like, don't say what is not happening. So that's why if those prophets are struggling, of course we will also do, but eventually they heard from God and they submitted to the revelation. So we can understand the overall prophetic picture. I really believe the grace is provided for us. All right, a few things very quickly. What's happening right now? We are in the future war of the church. Apostle Chuck Pierce wrote a book, Future War of the Church. Next year, we're going to do some training on this book because I think it's time for us to understand. But then, the way he described it is when he received this message more than 30 years ago, he said it will be all the way to 2025. Why? It's really for nations to be able to choose. He will show different systems. Now, it doesn't mean now, some of the nations used by the enemy to kind of draw the line, it doesn't mean those nations cannot be redeemed, okay? Don't think like that. But there are some nations that are being used by the evil forces at the moment. So Malaysia is in that. We are being used by evil right now. So that's why, yeah, I know some of you, I don't know if you think it's funny or not funny, but I think I'm glad I'm in this season where we can have an impact. So what are we going to do about it? Then, of course, we talk about season of occupation, one-line summary. What are the things that we must do so that nations will have opportunity to become sheep? Because Jesus said the nations will be separated as sheep and goat. So that means there is an opportunity, but to do that, we have to go into the different structure. We have to change education. We have to change the culture. We have to change economy. And when you look at our nation and many other nations, well, all the areas are demonic. And it's true because the ecclesia the church say, oh, we're going to stay far away, stay very far away. How do you impact society if you are so far away? Right? So this is a season of occupation. Now, war in Israel, I think is something that is going to be very interesting happening. And, I was just watching, even in US, right, there's a great support for Israel, but the church is divided also because of all the news, all the opinion and things like that. But I was just watching, some of you know a program called Flashpoint. It is a news provided program, and Lance Warner, a few of them are there. And they kind of say something which I have felt for a while. This war is going to be for a while. And some people will be like, just like, when Ukraine-Russian war, people say, oh, it's going to be over in a while. No, because there are forces out there, they have great interest in prolonging war. Their entire profit economic system is based on war. So these are the people that are out there, and they want to extend it as long as possible because they will be profiting. So that's why this will expose the motives of many people. And this is one of God's way to draw his line. Then, of course, the mindset of war is very, very important because we have, no matter what is your position of war, the reality is it is already here. And we have to decide how we will engage. And finally, the whole thing is, what is the church role? Because there are some people who say, oh, the church should just retreat and hide. And that could be one interpretation, but if that's you, then you have no role, right? See, one of the things, every time, if client want to see us, sometimes, a very important case, then my boss will say, oh, you come also. And yeah, not so important won't involve me. Okay? And the thing is, he is always asking this question, what is our role? If we have no role, we are wasting our time. He's not giving face to the client, And sometimes he will tell big client, you are wasting our time. We have no job here. So it's true. We have to ask ourselves, what is our role? If we have no role in all these things, let's just continue to have party here, right? But we have a role. We have a role to change the overall prophetic picture. So what is your contribution? And another way to think about it is your contribution. And it's I know some people don't like this word because this is the mindset of prophet, which is in the Bible, but the pastoral only church say, oh, you shouldn't think about profit. You shouldn't think about contribution. But it's but later on when we talk about reprieve, I want to talk a little bit more on this. All right, so what should our war strategies be? It's this very broad one because you have to hear the prophetic words and then you kind of devise your own, right? So last year, now every time come to first fruit, I always say, look, there are many sources of first fruit teaching, right? You can watch GOZ. I think GOZ is doing dreams and visions. So if you are the dreamer type, you can go there because Kislev is a month of dreams. Then, of course, you can watch Apostle Michelle on Facebook and things like that. The other one is a more overview of the whole time to advance. They cover many, many points, which is useful if you're not familiar with the month. But for us, we usually pick 1 or 2 points and I just run with it and I kind of ignore the rest, okay? And so what I do usually is I will look at what did I teach last year. And, well, if it's applicable, maybe I'll teach it again. But very, very seldom I repeat. But I saw what I taught last year, November 2022, and one of the strategy when we talk about the war is the 3 words God gave us. We had to be robust, agile, and flexible. And I just want to kind of reproduce here very quickly a one slide kind of thing because that's the characteristic. Look at your neighbor and say characteristic. God wants us to be robust, agile, and flexible. So robust, what is robust? You're like a tank. So you play game, right? You play strategy game, or nowadays you had the micromanage role-playing game like Dota or League of Legends. You have different kind of character, and one of the most important one is tank. You know what is you think about tank. What's the purpose of tank? Tank, of course, you think about World War II, is great firepower, but in gaming, tank is you are the target. Everyone attack you, and hopefully you don't die, so that other people can advance. So the tank is almost like a decoy. And see, but we look at the characteristic of tank, because tank came out in World War I, World War II, at that time versus infantry. Even machine gun is useless against tank. But of course, nowadays, you have RPG, you have landmine, and sometimes the tank is very powerful. They even need drones or jet fighter to take it out. But that's the thing. We have to be as robust as a tank, because that's one of the things. So in other words, if you want to think about robust, is tahan laksa. You need to be tahan laksa in this season, right? That means you are down, but you're not out. So that's why first truth, I say, I know we are not very religious about the whole thing. If you need to be away, you can be away. But it's really that time of the month we reset our emotions so that we become tahan laksa again and again and again. Agile is talking about quickness and fast reaction, and that's why it kind of reminds me of why we don't have chair, right? So if suddenly something happens, we need to evacuate this building, we'll be out in 1 minute. So can you imagine a very formal kind of meeting? It is an emergency, people will be looking left, right. What's happening? Whereas for us, we'll all be out already. Quickness and fast reaction. Actually, I think back about COVID time, right? It's because lockdown time, we never stop. Some of you didn't come here, but the tech team and Judah never stopped. And so once in a while, we're like, we're doing all this thing. Is someone going to show up here? If they show up, what is going to be our response? So we kind of have a script already, right? We're here, we're doing some production, we're doing some dance. Why you need dance and production, this kind of thing. But all kind of cookout story. And it's really about quickness and fast reaction. And in business, it's like that, right? These days, you see the business that can adjust quickly are the one that is taking all the business. You say, I need a quotation. In some of the big company, where the quotation take 1 week to come. By the time you get a quotation, the job is done already. Agile, this is the new way. Then, of course, the other thing about agility is this. You have to trust God's revelation. This is one of the parts that I find very, very vexing, because when we know it's God and people are like, is it really God? Is it really not God? And you're like, peeling off the petal of flowers. But it's not. It's like when you have the revelation, you have to trust. That's the agility. Just do it. And I find that a lot of people struggle with this because they are trying to rationalize, is this from God? So I'm telling you, this is not the season to do that. And, I give you one example, because some of you know the late Rush Limbaugh. He is a great thinker. Some people even call him a circular prophet. And, a lot of my mindset is changed because I listened to him for 2 to 3 years. But one of the things I really get it from him is that he said, look, some of us don't have the luxury of doing all the processing. It's like you can't analyze everything because you don't have the capacity to do that. But you are able to say, I trust this person, I trust this revelation because this is what is being said and it has been tested out, I'm going to believe that. So, of course, there's a danger that this person becomes, in terms of spirituality, it becomes a second-hand Jesus and things like that. That's why we say, look, all the prophetic words, you have to judge for yourself. But if you already decided it's from God, you have to accept it. Otherwise, just delete it and say it's not from God. And then you have to deal with God. I mean, if it's really from Him, then He will come and, I don't know, maybe you have dreams or whatever. Get some hantaming. Flexible is different from agility. Flexible is really the ability to continually shift. You can change because God has moved on. right? So it's like some people, somebody are doing certain things, and then also, hey, I'm still doing this, but Jesus have left the chat room. Move on. So flexible is like we are able to see what is happening. We're able to adopt heaven's position. So one of the things that we have to be flexible right now is, I know we have been talking warfare for a long time, for a few years already, but we are in this season. We do not say there is no war when we're in the season of war. And that is what happened with Isaiah, right? Where he was giving the message and there was pushback. The king said, it's a conspiracy. You prophets are conspiring. And God said, there is no conspiracy. You better declare that. So that's why when it is so clear that the Spirit of God is saying that we're in a season of war, do not say we are not in war. Because that will just show your inflexibility, and I don't know, I don't want to face with God with this. It's not funny to do that. All right, the next thing is we have to embrace the cycle of war. Now, this is another thing that I taught in Kislev last year. I thought it's worth repeating because there is a cycle of war. And remember, we talked about this in context of the year of recovery, but it's still the same. We fight, and okay, if you lose, then you go back and fight again, right? You go back to the zero position. But if you have victory, you recover. And, I think about David, right? David, and when they come, they went, their base was Ziklag, and they came back, they smelled burning, and all of a sudden, their assets are gone, the wives are stolen, the children are stolen. Remember that part? And all of a sudden, they have to make a decision. Do we just accept our loss, or do we go and fight for recovery? And they decided, and the chapter ended with David and his men recover everything. So this is a cycle of war. So fighting, here's the thing. Some people even never get started. Because they say, I'm not fighting, my hands are tied. My hands are too short. My legs are too short, whatever. And so they never get fighting, but then what happens? They remain oppressed. If you don't fight, you are oppressed. Or you pander to the enemy. So pandering, pandering is a word. Pander meaning the enemy is doing something, you're like, okay lah. Parents can pander to their children. When children are behaving very badly and you allow it, that's pandering. So we see political cooperation, when one of the parties is doing very badly, the rest kept silent, that's pandering. That's Malaysia right now. So fighting, some of us never get there, but we have to come out, right? So now to fight, what do you need? You need training. You need revelation. You need action. That's why first fruit is time for all this kind of thing. Yes, a large portion of our gathering here is celebrate, and we're going to have, hopefully, nice food later today. Feast. Okay, that's a better word. But in the midst of feast, we need to train, right? We need to upgrade ourselves. That's why all these things are to help us. Then victory. Proverbs 24:6, by the way, with God's counsel, we wage war and victory. This is Mossad's slogan. Mossad? Mossad is Israel intelligence. Right? In fact, they even have a new agency now. The new agency is, actually their motto is really to kill Hamas and free the hostages. So this is something that they use. It's like, hey, you have to understand the need for war, and the purpose of war is to have victory. If you are not aiming for victory, why are you fighting, right? If you are playing to lose, then don't play at all. Recovery, of course. 1 Samuel 30:18 is the David part. When they lost everything at Ziklag, they took back everything. And the legal word we use is restoration. Now, restoration, we talked about it last week. You can only have restoration based on what you lost. So today, if you say, my net income, my bank account only have 500 ringgit. So if all stolen, your maximum restoration is 500 ringgit. So you can only have restoration based on what you have. So that's why it's very, very important we know what we have. Restitution, of course, is when enemies stole it from you, then they had to pay back more. So you in legal terms, we talk about damages and things like that. So when you have that again, then you go back to the first point again, and you begin to look, what are some of the areas I had to fight? So why is this important? Because it continues. When you finish one assignment, it's not the end. Some people, after you achieve a great assignment, especially for the body of Christ, this is something that is very serious. Every time they reach the pinnacle, and we study from church history, Luther, Wesley, all of them, when they reach a certain kind of success, they felt like they're at the top of the world, and they kind of rest. And that's how the whole wineskin deteriorates. So you all know Apostle Peter Wagner's story, right? He was in The prayer movement for 10 years, great success, 220 million. Okay, I just checked the number. 220 million souls saved. That's a great number, right? No matter where you are today, 220 million in 10 years is great result. Is it a great result? It's tremendous result. And he was like, oh, I deserve a rest. And to kind of revive this embracing of the cycle of war, a prophet came, Chuck Pierce, of course, and said, are you still the apostle for the prayer movement? It's like, don't get too comfortable. Don't think it's job done. It's not done yet. And we'll continue this. And that's why some of you are considering retirement. Just talking to someone just now. There's no retirement. There's no retirement. Now, your capacity change. You don't have to be on the field all the time, but you can't retire, right? And so many, my father always say, right, the moment he saw people retire and don't do anything, they die quickly. This is the reality of retirement. So don't retire. Look at your neighbor and say, don't retire. That's why the whole movement about, especially in the West, the young people say we'll work very, very hard until the age of 30, we have enough saving for the rest of our life and we quit our job. I don't know what is that movement called. That's called idiot. That's called idiocy. I mean, it's like, so a lot of these people, after a while, because of inflation, interest rate change, now they say, oh, unfortunately, we have to come back to work. So you're seeing those already because the return on investment cannot sustain. I mean, who wants to be retired for 50 years? Anyway. Okay, so here's the thing. When we commit to that cycle, more revelations will be given to us. But if we say we don't want to be part of it, then the revelation will be limited, okay? Now, here's another thing about this war cycle, and this is tough for some of us because God will show us the people who are not willing to fight with us. Some people don't want what you are doing. And this can include your parents. This can include your siblings. This can include your children. This can include your close friends. This is just a reality. Look at your neighbor and say, this is reality. So take Abraham. Abraham had to leave his surrounding, right? He had to leave his foundation. He had to leave the parents, and he almost got stuck because the brother died. Lot's father died. And he got stuck for 20 years. He had to leave everything, and then familiarity, and God said, go to this land which you've never been before. Some of you will have this kind of calling. Then you're like, where is Mongolia or whatever? It's like, but that's why some people are like, when they become believers, they're like, oh, why God send me to a place I don't want? No, He will send you to where you can prosper. He will send you to where you're supposed to be. But the process is that you have to undo a lot of your desires and wants. So Abraham had to go through the whole cycle of deliverance. And finally, he was able to achieve his destiny, to lay the foundation for the first nation that God will use to reach out the world, which is Israel, right? So we will have to have the determination. Now, here's the thing. Here's a word for the future, determination. And people will come and tell you, don't waste your time, don't do this, don't do that. Because we need to be determined, regardless of our situation. If we want to be the people, Abraham is called the Hebrew, right? Hebrew means the one who crosses over. So we want to be the one who can cross into our future, right? That's really why we even have war strategies. All right, now let me talk about reprieve. Everyone say reprieve. Yeah, it's a not a very common word, right? So let's start with the verse first. Galatians 6, verses 2, 4 to 5, 9 to 10. And this is, of course, now, by the way, Galatians, when you read Galatians, I have great interest in Galatians because this is one of the books that, this is the first book that I developed my own Bible study, okay? So I really, at least I read this book at least 100 times. And it's really interesting because it was at the beginning of Apostle Paul's journey. He was still kind of raw, R-A-W. But then towards the end, you can see the maturing process. Can God use your rawness? Can. The rawness is still from God. And sometimes you look at the Bible, you can see some parts are not very refined. You look at someone like Gideon like that, very, very rough on the edges. Even you can argue maybe he didn't finish well. We can't be sure. So, but this is the part very interesting that he kind of come to a place, in the first part, he was like blasting everyone. He was scolding Peter. He was scolding Barnabas. He's like, why are you all hypocrite? But towards the end, he kind of mellowed down and come to a conclusion about how the body of Christ should interact. Okay, start with verse 2. Bear one another's burdens and therefore fulfill the law of Christ. But each one must examine his own work, and then he or she will have reason for boasting in regard to himself or herself alone, and not in regard to another. For each one will bear his own load. Then, verse 9. Let us not lose heart in doing good, for in due time we will reap if we do not grow weary. So then, while we have opportunity, let us do good to all people, especially those who are of the household of faith. Now, this is very important because I really felt like this speaks about the time and season we are in right now. People are kind of confused about the role of the church. Are we supposed to help other people? Why do you all keep talking about self-starting? Some people have problem with self-starting. Some people are like, why you keep talking about self-starting? Why can't you help me? Well, when you are we are trying to help you to help yourself. Okay, does it make sense or not? I think that's better, right? It's like give a person a fish and he will not go hungry for 3 days, but teach him how to fish and he will not be hungry forever. So Kislev, so we come back to another part of Kislev, is we are talking about the support system. So this support system is really a part of this reprieve. Okay, we'll talk about that in a while. So let's break down a few concepts. First, bearing each other's burdens, Galatians 6:2. And people like to quote there, we should bear each other's burden. That's why I call you. Why you never pick up my phone? How come you never help me? Now you'll be surprised. Once upon a time, I do a lot of pastoral work. Okay? So I understand this. I understand the need. And it's important. It's important to encourage people. It's true. It's true. And now, how much to do that? Last week, I was just talking to some people, and somebody had been away for a while. And there's no fixed formula one. You want to ask a person to come out. Everyone have their own strategy. Some people just prefer texting. Some people like to call. Some people never like to text. Cannot text one. Must talk. Okay, if you want to talk to me, please text me. Okay, don't call me. So it's like we have all the different styles. It's okay. We are all differently. The introvert don't really like to talk one. So generally speaking. So this is a true verse. And when we look at the ecclesia, see, the ecclesia is the whole body, right? It's the whole body. And we are all linked to some, not all. See, this is one of the things that the pastoral-only gang need to learn, that you are not supposed to be friends with all the Christians. That's not what it is, right? 1 Corinthians chapter 12 and chapter 14 talk about we are knitted with some, not all. So what does it mean? That means some people we must connect. There are people God sent to your life. And there are other people we are not to connect. It's like somebody in Somalia, you want to pray for them. It's like, what's your relationship? Do you know them? Oh, no, I just found them online. Somebody sent me a forwarded message, have been forwarded at least 10 times already. Forwarded. Next time you see the forwarded message, you put there how many times forwarded. I bet you most of your forwarded message at least 10 times. But actually, now the app kind of limit to 6 times, I think. But still, there are some people you're not supposed to connect. So that's why when we interpret this verse, it's really your sphere. It's really your arena. Don't be a busybody. You'll be surprised how often I have to say that in my own house, okay? Don't be a busybody. Yeah, because people, by nature, the pastoral, the Confucius spirit is they don't have boundary one. But by nature, it's like that. So if we want to be self-starter, we want to be apostolic, we have to learn to draw boundary. No is an anointed word. So at this point, let's ask this question. Why is it necessary to consider and reconsider our support system? Because this is the prophetic picture for this month, right? Kislev, right? Just now, Judah started off by saying this is a month of Kislev. We are supposed to support one another. It's because when we look at the assignment, the warfare, it's often a corporate assignment. It's often a tribe affair. See, when we say we want to fight for our nation, it's not just your personal mission, right? It's our corporate mission. When we say, the economy is very bad, we want prosperity for this thing, it's a corporate assignment. So that's why I want to suggest to you that when Apostle Paul mentioned this, bearing each other's burden in verse 2, he is talking in context of corporate. So you see, I give you an example. People say, bear each other's burden, you should help me. It's okay, it's fine. But then I would say the greater thing is you are helped, you are revised so that you become part of the corporate movement. You are never revived, you never receive blessing just for your own benefit. And this is something that I find the pastoral only gathering have great difficulty in understanding. Because for them, you have to take care of everyone. And then, we have to be in so many places in the past 3 years, not in recent time. And we go there, try to shift them into the new move of God. And they were like, everything you say, we agree. Anyway, I need to get back. I need to cook the soup. I need to do whatever. It's like they cannot get out from that mindset that there is a greater assignment. See, this is one of the challenge of this season. And I tell you, when you meet people, and you have to ask God, how are you going to shift them into end-time kingdom manifesting saints believer? That's going to be one of the challenge. But this is the part. Now, I'll show you the evidence why I believe this is the right thing. Because in verse 5, he says, each one will bear his own load. Seems a bit contradictory, right? But if the first part is you carry each other's burden for corporate nature, then this verse makes sense. You understand what I'm trying to say or not? Don't get me wrong. It's okay to help people. It's necessary to help people. But we cannot keep on helping people and cause them not to grow. This is very, very important in this season because this is a season, I believe, verse 5 is manifesting. Each one will bear his own load. There are certain loads which only an individual can bear. There are certain things only you can decide. Nobody can do it for you. Why so? Because our faith and destiny has to manifest. We talk about corporate level, but it also manifests at personal level. That's why when we give prophetic words to you, you can have your mentor, you can have your advisor, you can have your teacher, you can have your apostle, whatever they give you, all the things, but it is still your decision. Nobody can force you to decide one way or another. This is what we mean. Each one will bear his or her own load. Then the last part, verse 9. Let us not lose heart to do good. And I think this is such an important verse because when you look at what's happening around the world, a lot of people kind of like, give up, right? They're like, look at our economy is so bad. No need to earn money already because whatever I earn is also going to be a loss. Some people think like that. Then I'm like, you don't need to eat. So it's like, but that's why Apostle Paul had to encourage them because a lot of them are losing heart. Their hearts are becoming like glass like that. See, this is in fact, we always talk about a lot of people have glass heart, right? This, in fact, will be the biggest challenge for many people going into the future. Do not lose heart. The weariness, the constant battles. Even if you are very convinced about a move, and that's why look at what happened in America after 2020. It's a good case study because they are facing all kind of challenges and a lot of people just kind of gave up. So remember, one of the things, I think we did a teaching before on how do we interpret, what do we make sense of prophetic words that doesn't come to pass. And a lot of prophets, eventually, they say, I give up. So they just kind of say, okay, I was wrong, I heard wrongly and things like that. It's like, did you really hear wrongly or is it because you are weary and you don't want to argue anymore? Because I imagine Jeremiah, I imagine Zechariah, I imagine Isaiah, at some point, they also felt like this. And they could have given up. But God said, do not declare what I have not declared. Okay, then suddenly they revive again. Elijah, right, gave up, right? And he wanted to die, right? This is not the time to give up. So it's very, very important. Okay, anyway, all these things, what has that got to do with reprieve? We haven't even talked about reprieve. Okay, so what does it mean to have a system of reprieve? And I think all these come together. But let's define the word reprieve first, okay? Reprieve means cancellation or postponement of a punishment. And this is something you will hear a lot. If you hear a lot of prophetic words, Sidney, Jacob, all these people, they use this word very, very often. Because God, the grace of God and the mercy of God allows for reprieve. And I remember one of the great prophetic words, 2007, I remember. You see, I always remember because she gave that word before 2008. And part of the word includes a political shaking, and we saw that in Malaysia, right, 308. And that time, there was one volcano in Indonesia. It was burning. It was firing already. And she just said, look, if people will repent, there will be a temporary reprieve. So it's a bit like Jonah, like that, right? Go there, and then if you repent, there will be a reprieve. And then the judgment was postponed for 120 years. It's a reprieve. So it's a postponement, it's a cancellation. So the legal term, we call it stay of execution. So we see a lot of cases, right? High-profile people, politicians being charged, and sometimes they say, oh, found guilty, sentenced to how many jail and years of jail. But all of a sudden, there is a reprieve because the law allows appeal. So while you appeal, yes, it's already sentenced already, but it's not the final sentence. So this is the meaning of reprieve. Now, another idea of reprieve is this: you live another day to fight, and maybe you will win. And this is always, I mean, if you watch a lot of football, the commentator, oh, what a reprieve. You know, the British one. And you think about some of the comeback, right? I mean, it's like, oh, talk about some of the... we see this expression used in sports. When a team is supposed to be dead and buried, and suddenly there's an opportunity to fight back. And you know, you think about tennis, and some of you know US Open, some great matches. Djokovic saved 2 match points from Federer 2 times, but both times he lost the title. Okay, but anyway, but he went into final. And of course, football, so many comeback, right? I mean, you talk about Manchester United treble, you talk about Liverpool in Istanbul and things like that. So these are the time you use the word reprieve, because you are dead and suddenly you are alive. Okay, so what do we mean by system of reprieve? And we're going to see how we link back to the Galatian verse. The system of reprieve basically is the grace of God. Look at your neighbor and say, grace of God. Why is the purpose of grace of God? It's very important. It's for us to engage long term. It is for us to become tahan lasa. And that's why another expression people always say, tahan gan, right? It's bad Malay, okay? They don't use that word. There's no such word as tahan gan, okay? But it's like you endure. You can endure. And you can engage long-term warfare, and you are down but never out. So system of reprieve, and we're finishing already, it's a combination of this. First, we talk about tribe alignment and relationship. We have to learn to carry each other's burden, but it's in context of tribe. It's context of corporate advancement. It's never I help you just for your own need. Of course, you are benefited, and it's true. But when you are helped, you help the entire body of Christ. We always must have this corporate mindset. Then we need to carry our own load. This is where self-determination and discipline comes in. And you know, right, people without discipline and self-determination, after a while, you know there's no way to help one. Have you tried to help people and they don't want to help themselves? And it will come to that sometimes you just have to leave them for a while, and maybe they will come back. Maybe they will wake up. This is the way God has been dealing. You know, sometimes, okay, you and that's why Apostle Paul said, right, some people in the body of Christ, you just have to hand them over to the devil. Okay, we don't do that necessarily. But when people want to do their own things, basically, you are trusting your faith to the world. So we have to understand this, the Galatians. Then the reprieve, where does reprieve come from? Is this new wineskin structure that allows the expression of ecclesia in tough seasons. See, we are in a very tough season, right? You look at what's happening around, and you know the kind of control that is happening, and sometimes you're like, oh, I just want to give up, I don't want to do anymore. But what God is saying is that, look, I can give you a system of reprieve that allows you to prosper even when the government is trying to shut you down. And we see some example of that. I'll give you some example. During the flood, right, there was a reprieve, right? It's Noah's Ark, right? The Ark was a reprieve. 8 persons decided. Then after Joshua, they went into a season of judges. Judges, in that season, 400 years, they have a lot of crazy enemies, right? Including the Philistines. And where is that reprieve? Goshen. God kind of say, you come there, you hide there. And then we talk about New Testament. When Apostle Paul went into different parts of Corinth and Ephesus, and he was confronted with a strong spirit of Greece. And he began to have that idea, hey, I can do micro churches. I can do marketplace churches with all the different, with Priscilla, Aquila, all these people. So it's like every time you have this kind of thing, God creates a new wineskin. Then let's talk about season of exile. When you are out from your nation, when your nation is destroyed, we saw remnant in marketplace, right? Joseph, Esther, Nehemiah, Daniel. Now, you remember all these people functioned when their whole nation was destroyed. Sorry, it's not Goshen. It's where Joshua's base is where it is. Suddenly I can remember. Do you remember Israel's pre-temple headquarters? Where Hannah met Eli? Where's that place already? Somebody, if you can shout out to me. Suddenly my brain is not working, okay? It's not Goshen, okay? Shiloh. Yeah, it's Shiloh. Crazy enemies, the wineskin structure to kind of defend themselves is Shiloh. So Shiloh was their headquarters for 400 years. But they were never happy with Shiloh because Shiloh is like kind of only the priests, the Levites are there. But anyway, I want to end with this because when I was doing this is what the Lord says to me. You see, in the days to come, and why are we linking all this with first fruit? Is that the celebration and advancement of first fruit. Now, let me just say this, we're not legalistic here. Sometimes you cannot be here, it's not the end of the world. But I'm talking about the spirit of wanting to celebrate God's best for us, wanting that revelation. So when we kind of say we want to celebrate first fruit, that kind of mindset, that kind of gathering is going to be part of our reprieve system. Why? Because God will give us revelation. God will give us connection. You know, some of you need to be here so that you have some human connection. You're like, yeah, I mean, it's like, I tell you, just sit down and say, oh, how's things and things like that. It's very important. I tell you, it's more important than you think. You need to, I mean, even if you have nothing to report or you feel like I don't want to say anything, but sometimes out of the conversation, a connection is made. A revelation is answered. Very, very important, okay? So don't despise small talk, you know, just come here, or, you know, people always don't talk very seriously with me. Maybe they think I'm very serious, but whatever, you know, you need to find people that you can connect with. Whatever, you know, start with small talk and all of a sudden God will lead to something meaningful. So this is why I really believe the whole mindset of first fruit celebration going to be part of the system of reprieve because we are all going to war at the gates of Hades, right? All right, so I'm done already, and Lord, I just pray right now you cause us to understand that this season we can have reprieve. We can have a place we can function. It's not a hiding place. I heard the Lord say the system of reprieve is not for you to hide, but it is for you to be recharged. It is a place of processing revelation. It is a place for confirming and affirming covenant and relationship. So I just pray and declare that we will find our own place of reprieve that will cause us to be able to advance and prosper at the gates of Hades. In Jesus' name, amen.